The Komar delegate's skull shattered like a dropped egg as the snarling Earth Warbeast leapt at his throat, ripping the reptilian alien's head clean off in a spray of green blood. The entire Galactic Council chamber fell silent, in utter shock at the sudden, brutally violent display. What they had just witnessed was the raw, devastating power of humanity's most closely guarded secret weapon, which had been bred and trained in hidden bases across Earth for this exact purpose, to destroy any alien threats to mankind's very survival. "This is what happens when you threaten humanity," Thomas Hunter declared, his voice booming through the cavernous hall as the dog-like creature sat obediently at his feet, razor fangs still dripping with Komar blood. For too long, the Komar have enslaved and slaughtered other races with impunity. No longer. The human ambassador stood tall and defiant before the assembled alien dignitaries. Many of them had lost their own loved ones to Komar aggression. Others had been forced to pay tribute to avoid conquest, but none dared stand up to the reptilian warriors. Until now. Thomas tapped a command into his wrist computer, and a shimmering hologram appeared, showing rank upon rank of dogs, wolves, and other Earth creatures, all wearing advanced battle armor and neural link collars, thousands of them, ready for war. "This is humanity's final warning. Withdraw from all invaded worlds and return to your borders, or face annihilation at the jaws and claws of Earth's warbeasts, your choice." In that moment, every alien in the chamber knew the galaxy would never be the same. They had all dismissed humanity as a primitive species, good only as slaves or fodder. But now, the truth was revealed. Humans were the ultimate predators, and they would fight without mercy to protect their pack. Tharos, the Komar delegate, merely laughed at Thomas's dire warning, dismissing the hologram of Earth's warbeast army with a casual flick of his reptilian hand. "You think your little pets scare me, human?" he sneered, baring his fangs. "The mighty Komar have crushed far deadlier creatures on the worlds we've conquered. Your beasts will be no different." With that, the Galactic Council session ended and the various alien dignitaries filed out of the chamber. Thomas stalked back to the Earth Embassy, his mind whirling with plans and contingencies. As soon as he arrived, he called an emergency meeting with his top officers and scientists. "The Komar won't back down," Thomas said grimly as his team gathered around the briefing table. "In fact, I expect them to launch an attack any day now, to prove their dominance. We need to accelerate our Beast Brigade program. Dr. Patel, give me an update on the training." Dr. Nikhil Patel, the lead xenobiologist, tapped a command into the table's interface. A series of holographic video feeds sprang to life, showing human soldiers working with a dizzying array of Earth creatures. There were tigers leaping through obstacle courses, elephants using their trunks to move heavy equipment, falcons diving at targets, and gorillas sparring with power-armored troops. "As you can see, Ambassador, our interspecies training protocols are highly effective," Dr. Patel said proudly. "Each animal is being conditioned to work in tandem with their human partners, maximizing their natural abilities. We've even begun integrating them into mixed tactical units for field operations." Thomas nodded, pleased to see the rapid progress. He turned to Dr. Emily Chen, the embassy's chief engineer. "And what about the Zorgak psionic tech? Have you cracked it yet?" In response, Dr. Chen held up a gleaming silver collar, its surface etched with intricate circuitry. "We finally have a working prototype based on the Zorgak's designs," she said with a hint of triumph in her voice. "This device will allow our human soldiers to communicate telepathically with their animal partners, instantly sharing commands and sensory data. It should give us a major edge in terms of coordination and reaction speed." Suddenly, a deafening alarm blared through the embassy, red lights flashing on every wall. Thomas sprang to his feet and raced to the command center, his team close behind. On the main view screen, a massive Komar battle fleet was dropping out of warp space near Hyadra Prime, a densely populated world allied with Earth. Thomas felt a cold rage settle over him as he watched the enemy dreadnoughts take up orbital positions, no doubt preparing to unleash a devastating bombardment. He spun to face his officers, his expression hard as steel. "This is it. The Komar have made their move just as we predicted. It's time to show them what happens when they dare threaten Earth and her friends. Thomas pointed to the screen, his voice ringing with righteous fury. Prep the Beast Brigade for immediate deployment. We're taking the fight to the enemy on the surface of Hyadra Prime, and we're going to rip them apart, fang and claw and gun. Now move. As his soldiers scrambled to relay the orders and prep their gear, Thomas allowed himself a small, grim smile. The Komar thought they knew war. They thought they understood savagery. But they had never faced the primal fury of Earth, that ancient killer instinct that still lurked in mankind's blood and bone. And now, with Earth's creatures at their side, linked mind to mind, fused into the ultimate predators, the humans would teach the Komar the true meaning of fear. The galaxy would tremble to behold the ferocity of the pack, of the Beast Brigade. The dropships sliced through Aloria's smoke-choked skies, hurtling toward the planet's embattled surface. Inside the lead craft, Thomas Hunter checked his rifle one last time, his jaw set with resolve. Beside him, Kong flexed his armor-clad fingers, eager for battle. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot barked over the comm. Thomas stood and faced his Beast Brigade, 24 humans and their animal partners, each a perfect fusion of raw instinct and military discipline. "Listen up," he shouted over the roar of the engines. "The Komar think they can break Aloria with their bombs and their tanks. They think they can grind the resistance into dust, but they've never faced anything like us before. We're going to show them what it means to fight like beasts. We're going to hit them hard and fast like a pack of wolves taking down a deer, and we're not going to stop until Aloria is free or we're dead, understood?" A chorus of growls, barks and roars answered him as the dropship shuddered to a halt. The ramp slammed down, revealing a hellscape of ruined buildings and shattered streets. Thomas was the first one out, Kong loping at his side. "Go, go, go," he bellowed, as the rest of the Beast Brigade poured out of the dropships, fanning out into the war-torn city. They moved with predatory grace, leaping over rubble and darting through alleyways, guided by the enhanced senses of their animal partners. A pack of wolves, each the size of a small pony, loped ahead, their human handlers close behind. They slipped into the shadows of a dense forest that bordered the city, melting into the undergrowth like ghosts. Minutes later, the staccato chatter of gunfire echoed from the trees, followed by the agonized screams of Komar soldiers. The wolves had found their prey. Overhead, a flight of eagles and falcons soared, their eyes scanning the ground below. Suddenly, one of the falcons let out a piercing cry and dove toward a cluster of Komar drones that were buzzing over a ruined factory. The bird slammed into the lead drone, ripping out its control module with its razor-sharp talons. The other drones wobbled and crashed, their formation broken. Thomas and Kong sprinted toward the factory, a squad of Beast Brigade troopers fanning out behind them. They could hear the guttural shouts of Komar shock troopers echoing from the rubble ahead. Thomas signaled for his team to take cover as a hail of plasma bolts sizzled overhead. Kong didn't even slow down. He charged straight into the teeth of the Komar fire, his armor absorbing the blows like they were raindrops. With a bellowing roar, the gorilla leapt into the midst of the enemy squad, his fists hammering down like pistons. Komar soldiers flew in all directions, their bodies broken and shattered by Kong's brute strength. Thomas was right behind his partner, his rifle snapping out quick, precise bursts. He picked off the Komar that Kong had missed, the ones struggling to bring their weapons to bear on the rampaging gorilla. In seconds, the fight was over. Kong turned to Thomas, his chest heaving with exertion. Thomas grinned and clapped the gorilla on his armored shoulder. "Good work, Kong. You showed those bastards who's top of the food chain, but we can't rest yet. The Komar will regroup and hit back harder. We need to keep moving, keep hunting." Just then, Thomas's comm crackled in his ear. "Commander Hunter, this is Dr. Patel. We've intercepted Komar transmissions. They're planning to deploy a new bioweapon, some kind of virus designed to wipe out Aloria's native wildlife. If they succeed, it could cripple the resistance and throw the whole ecosystem out of balance." Thomas swore under his breath. "Copy that, Doctor. Send me the coordinates of the Komar's bioweapon facility. We'll put that monstrosity out of commission before they can unleash it." He turned to Kong, his expression grim. "You heard the man. We've got a new target. Rally the pack. It's time to show the Komar just how far we're willing to go to protect our own." Kong nodded, his dark eyes glinting with fierce intelligence. He raised his massive head and let out a resounding howl that echoed off the broken buildings. Answering cries rose up from all around as the Beast Brigade prepared for their next mission, their blood running hot with the thrill of the hunt. The night hung heavy over the Komar bioweapons facility, the air thick with the stench of chemicals and death. Thomas crept through the shadows, his Beast Brigade fanned out behind him. Up ahead, Kong and a pack of gene-modded tigers took point, their enhanced senses probing the darkness for any sign of the enemy. A low growl rumbled in Kong's throat, and the gorilla signaled for the team to halt. Thomas froze, his rifle sweeping the corridor. Ahead, the tigers had dropped into a predatory crouch, their eyes locked on a pair of Komar guards patrolling the entrance to the main lab. With a burst of speed, the tigers lunged forward, their claws raking across the guards' reptilian throats before they could even cry out. The Komar crumpled to the floor, their blood pooling on the cold metal. Thomas and his human squadmates stacked up on either side of the lab door, their weapons trained on the entrance. Dr. Chen edged forward, her EMP device clutched in one hand. She nodded to Thomas, and he kicked the door open with a resounding clang. Inside, a dozen Komar scientists whirled to face them, snatching up plasma rifles from nearby workstations. Thomas and his team opened fire, their bullets ripping through the air. Two of the scientists fell, their chests stitched with bloody holes. Dr. Chen darted forward, dodging a hail of plasma bolts, as she slapped her EMP device onto the lab's main control panel. With a crackling hiss, the device detonated, sending a pulse of energy rippling through the room. The lights flickered and died, and the whine of machinery ground to a halt. In the sudden darkness, Thomas could see the eerie glow of the bioweapon canisters, their contents swirling with malevolent purpose. He stalked forward, his rifle trained on the remaining Komar. "Dr. Chen, get those explosives rigged. Kong, watch her back. The rest of you, with me, we hold this position until the charges are set." Thomas and his soldiers took up positions around the containment unit, using the canisters as cover. The Komar regrouped, their eyes glinting with rage in the dim emergency lighting. With a hissing battle cry, they charged forward, plasma rifles blazing. The lab erupted into a storm of gunfire and sizzling plasma. Thomas felt the heat of a bolt sear past his cheek as he drilled a burst of rounds into a Komar's chest. Beside him, a war dog leapt at another reptilian trooper, its augmented jaws clamping down on the alien's throat and wrenching it free in a spray of green blood. Again and again, the Komar hurled themselves at the Beast Brigade's defenses, heedless of their losses. Thomas's rifle clicked empty, and he drew his sidearm, putting a round through the faceplate of a Komar that had gotten too close. The air grew thick with the stench of ozone and charred flesh. "Charges set," Dr. Chen yelled over the chaos. 5 minutes and counting." Thomas keyed his calm, his voice ragged with exertion. "You heard her, people. Fighting retreat to the extraction point. It's going to get hot in here real soon." The Beast Brigade fell back by squads, their animals forming a snarling rear guard. Kong scooped up a fallen Komar's plasma rifle and raked the enemy with suppressing fire, the weapon looking like a child's toy in his massive hands. They fought their way through the facility's twisting corridors, the Komar dogging their every step. Thomas felt the sting of a plasma bolt graze his arm, the pain distant through the rush of adrenaline. At last, they burst out into the cool night air, the jungle beyond the compound's walls a welcome sight. Behind them, a deep rumble started in the earth, growing quickly to a roar. The bioweapons lab exploded in a geyser of flame and debris, the shockwave knocking Thomas and his team to the ground. As the ringing in his ears subsided, Thomas looked up at the burning ruins of the facility, a fierce grin splitting his face. They had struck a blow against the Komar today, but the war was far from over. The night sky blazed with the glow of the burning bioweapons facility. Thomas grinned fiercely through the pain of his wounds as he watched the flames dance. The Komar's most devastating weapon was no more. The Beast Brigade's attack on the compound had dealt a crippling blow to the enemy, and in the days that followed the tide began to turn. With their bioweapon destroyed and their forces in disarray, the Komar started to give ground, pulling back from their forward positions on Aloria. Thomas and his soldiers pressed the attack, striking hard and fast at the enemy's weak points. Supply depots burned. Communications relays shattered into sparking ruin. Command bunkers caved in under the relentless assault of Kong and the Warbeasts. The Alorian resistance rallied to their side, emerging from hidden bases to harry the Komar's flanks. What had begun as a desperate holding action turned into a full-fledged rout as the invaders fell back in ever-growing disorder. But the Komar would not go quietly. In a last defiant gesture, Tharos, their warlord, issued a challenge to Thomas, a final duel to the death, champion against champion, to decide the fate of Aloria and the war. Thomas didn't hesitate. He met Tharos on a blasted plain. The scorched earth cracked and pitted by weeks of fighting. The two armies formed a vast circle around the combatants, human and Komar alike, waiting with bated breath. Tharos was a towering figure in spiked black armor, a crackling energy blade in his clawed hands. His reptilian eyes glittered with a cruel intelligence as he sized up his human opponent. Thomas wore the scars of a dozen hard-fought battles, his battered combat armor spattered with Komar blood. He carried no energy weapons, just a simple combat knife and the slug thrower at his side. The two champions circled each other warily, probing for weaknesses. Tharos struck first, his energy blade hissing through the air in a blinding arc. Thomas ducked aside, feeling the searing heat of the blade as it passed inches from his face. He rolled to his feet and lunged forward, his knife darting for the joints of Tharos's armor. The Komar parried the blow with contemptuous ease, his return stroke slicing a glowing line across Thomas's chestplate. Back and forth they fought, the impacts of their blows echoing like thunder across the plain. Thomas gave ground steadily before Tharos's inhuman strength and speed, his blade scoring the Komar's armor, but finding no vital points. In a sudden blur of motion, Tharos slipped past Thomas's guard, his energy blade sinking into the human's side. Thomas screamed as the smell of his own burning flesh filled his nostrils. He could feel his blood soaking his armor, mingling with the ash and dirt beneath his feet. But even as he fell to one knee, Thomas summoned the last of his strength. With a wordless cry of pain and fury, he surged to his feet and inside Tharos's reach, driving his knife up under the lip of the Komar's helmet with all his fading might. Tharos staggered back, dark blood spurting from his throat. He sank to his knees, his eyes wide with shock and dismay. Thomas stepped forward, his vision graying at the edges, and wrenched his blade free in a spray of gore. But even as the Komar warlord fell, his body twitching in its final throes, Thomas felt a terrible coldness spreading through his veins. He looked down to see the pulsing shaft of Tharos's energy blade protruding from his chest, buried to the hilt in his heart. The two champions collapsed on the bloody earth, the last of their strength spent. The silent armies looked on in stunned disbelief as the mightiest of the Komar and the greatest of the Beast Brigade lay dying, their lives bought and sold for the sake of a world. As darkness closed in around him, Thomas heard the distant cries of Kong and his animal companions, the pounding of their feet as they rushed to his side. He tried to smile, to whisper some final words of comfort and courage, but the blackness was too deep, the cold too bitter. With a last shuddering breath, Thomas Hunter, hero of the Beast Brigade and savior of Aloria, passed from the world of the living. But his legacy would endure, a shining beacon of hope in a galaxy beset by darkness. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.